Welcome in. Oh, my head's cut off. Amanda here from Sober and Beyond. Hope y'all are having a good day. We are here with our Tuesday rehab topic. I facilitate group meetings at a rehab. And every Tuesday, I let you in on the rehab secrets, I guess. I bring these topics to you, the family members and friends of addicts, because include their perspective of what your loved ones are focusing on. And I also think that these subjects, they're beneficial for both people with addictions and the family members as well. My necklace. All right, I fixed it. This week's topic is boundaries. So vote on our topic, and then at the end I asked them if they wanted to do the loser of the vote for the following week, and they said yeah. So that means that the loser was boundaries, and that's what we talked about today. Boundaries. Okay, this is a tough topic, and I think a lot of people bring up boundaries, and it can be a little frustrating because the topic is very uncomfortable for a lot of us, especially if we come from family that is dysfunctional or chaotic, where boundaries weren't allowed to exist, or maybe the boundaries that did exist weren't very healthy, or there should have been boundaries in certain places and there wasn't, vice versa as well. Important framework on boundaries. Now, it's uncomfortable because it doesn't feel normal. We haven't been conditioned to be healthy or to understand boundaries. And for that reason, it's going to feel bad or wrong, or you might feel guilty in there as well, just because we haven't had the opportunity to practice it. And we were never given the environment where boundaries were, I guess, implemented. Okay. So I'm just referencing the sheet that I used. What happens when we're in dysfunctional families is boundaries are discouraged. You're conditioned to function within the dysfunction. And that means boundaries, communication, taking care of ourselves, all of those things aren't allowed because you're conditioned to function dysfunctionally. You have a role in the dysfunction and you have to play this role. That leads to this discouragement of boundaries just in general. So when we are starting to implement them, there's going to be guilt or hesitation, or your survival instincts might start kicking in just because it's so uncomfortable that it pulls you into this threatening zone where you remember as a child, perhaps my survival was threatened because I wanted to have boundaries. I wasn't allowed to do that and I got in trouble for that. So that those types of things will resurrect when we're trying to practice boundaries. Something to note, as the loved one of an addict, addiction actually thrives where in places where boundaries are weak. Addiction, it loves dysfunction, it loves lack of communication, guilt, shame, and it also loves when boundaries are not implemented. However, with sobriety, This is why we talk about boundaries a lot in sobriety, and I think sometimes people get a little annoyed at it, like, "Shut up about these boundaries already." However, we talk about it so much because it really is vital in the recovery process, and for someone to be just in general successful in their recovery and sobriety, they have to establish boundaries, and they have to be very clear on those boundaries. Just so that you're clear, boundaries are not punishment. They're not about coercing anyone to do anything. It's not about controlling anyone. It's not about rejection or abandonment either. Though it's not about those things, it feels like you're abandoning people when we start playing with our boundaries. It feels as though we're trying to control or dictate other people. And that's part of why it feels so uncomfortable. However, I will love to declare to you that boundaries are actually a form of self respect. It has nothing to do with the other person, and it's all about you. Where are your lines? What do you allow? What do you not allow? That's all boundaries are. These are my rules and regulations. If you are in my house, these are my rules. And if you're not going to abide by my rules or you don't like my rules, because that's fair as well, we have a door and you can exit anytime you like. I can escort you to the door, or you can find your way to the door yourself. Either way, it's about respecting myself first and making sure that I'm the priority and ensuring that within that respect, I adhere to that with every other person in my life. And like I said, we aren't controlling people. You do as you want, feel as you want. But when you're in my house, there are certain regulations here. And that's all it is. If you don't like it, leave. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Boundaries help us to define, like I said, what are our responsibilities? What are not our responsibilities? What behaviors do we accept? And of course, what behaviors we are not going to accept. Boundaries help to protect and preserve our time, our energy, our values, our emotional safety. And of course, as it pertains to your loved one, they help to protect their sobriety. Now, what are boundaries? What are they not? The first thing that's not a threat. I'm not threatening you when I'm communicating my boundaries. It might feel like a threat if you're receiving that. If you come from a place where boundaries are not familiar, it will feel like an attack for you. However, boundaries are not a threat or an attack. They're also not ultimatums. They are not manipulation. They are not an attempt to control anyone, and they certainly are not selfish. As it pertains to dysfunctional environments or homes, excuse me, boundaries will feel wrong because they were discouraged in the home, and they will continue to be discouraged even though maybe everyone lives separately. They will continue to try to coerce everyone to maintain their role. Even though we don't live together, you have to maintain this role in this dysfunctional unit. So you could find that even adult children will, their parents quite possibly could try to manipulate them or push boundaries or resist boundaries just simply because the parent is trying to preserve the dysfunction of the family unit. Some phrases that are very common for doing this: don't rock the boat. I'm sure y'all have heard that or said that, and depends on the context, but in this context, we're just kind of saying, "Just stop making waves. You're gonna have to take it in the chin and leave it alone. Someone else is more important or more valuable than you." It's essentially what we're saying. Another phrase could be, "Family comes before everything." A lot of people try to convince you that you have this allegiance or alliance with your family and you're not allowed to break from that. It's quite interesting because, of course, over 98% of the people in the rehab, they come from dysfunctional or traumatic childhoods or families. And it's like those are the people who were supposed to have loved you and kept you safe and didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't. And yet those will be the same people who are trying to demand you to be honorable to the family. The people who were supposed to love you and nurture you who didn't are going to be the first ones to stand up and say, "You owe me. You're supposed to be true to us. You're supposed to be on our side. You're supposed to remain dysfunctional." Those are gonna be the first people who will say, "You owe me something." Other phrases include loyalty means silence. You have to maintain your loyalty and keep our secrets. We'll find that quite often in dysfunctional families, almost to the point where you might stand up for your abuser. You have this debt that you feel like you owe them or you feel bad for them in some context, so you can't share the secrets. You don't wanna get them in trouble. And oftentimes, you're not allowed to talk about what happens in the home. Love means sacrifice. That's a big one. Okay, context matters. In general, of course, we have to sacrifice superficially for people that we're in relationships with, and those sacrifices are something that we agree to as it pertains to remaining in the relationship. However, we are not meant to sacrifice ourselves for anyone or anything. It's almost like, as it pertains to this context, you're supposed to lay your life down for others. My life stops so that your life could be put as the priority. And here's another one. We have several people in the group who there always seems to be several people in the group who struggle with feeling responsible for other people's feelings. And this was conditioned into them during their childhood, where perhaps there was some kind of a threat. In this example, let's say the father is in the home and he's very violent. And as soon as he gets home, you have to be on your best behavior to ensure you don't anger him. You do everything you can. You're hyper vigilant, reading his face, reading his tone, taking care to not upset him, not anger him, because your life depends on it. Whether or not you eat tonight could depend on that. Whether or not you have a broken nose could depend on that. So there is this very deeply ingrained ideology that we're responsible for the feelings of other people, or we're supposed to tread lightly for you. I will be uncomfortable for the sake of you because I love you, and that's what love is. It's very misconstrued. And as you know, there are 7 main family roles that often appear in homes with addiction. We'll have the caretaker, the peacemaker, the scapegoat, the hero, the lost child, of course, the addict, so forth. And what we find is a lot of these roles, the only way they really function is with an absence of boundaries. The only way I can really enable you is if I'm constantly crossing my boundaries and your boundaries. Like, it's not allowed to exist. The roles can't fully function with the existence of boundaries. And because those roles are our main identities and those roles take precedent, they actually ingrain in people that they're supposed to ignore their own needs, that they should feel guilty for saying no or speaking up for themselves, that their worth is measured by how useful they are. If I just do a little more, you might eventually love me. If I give a little bit more, then maybe you'll like me. Maybe you'll want to be around me. There's this constant panic that I have to prove myself to you in order for you to be around, to defend, or I have to explain myself. And even if we do have boundaries, it's this kind of need to fully explain why we have the boundary, our side of it, and try to maybe debate it or defend it. Okay. Let's talk about why boundaries are so uncomfortable. I just got a warning saying that my internet connection was unstable, so hopefully we're still good to go. The timer's still on. Why are boundaries so uncomfortable? Apart from the fact that you have been conditioned to not have them and you're out of practice, they feel weird because you've never done it. If I don't play the guitar, but if I just picked one up and tried to strum a song, it would just feel really awkward and weird. My fingers wouldn't like it, my wrists wouldn't like it. It might tear into my skin because I haven't built up any strength in my skin for that particular instance. I'm not used to it. It's going to feel weird and uncomfortable for me. Apart from that, boundaries, when we're starting to implement them, they can trigger our old survival fears. Like I said in that example of the father getting upset and you being overly cautious and trying your best not to upset the father, this might resurrect that childhood fear of danger, threat to our lives. Maybe we won't get to eat. Maybe I'll get my nose broken tonight. Those fears will be equally as strong as how you felt when you were actually in the situation and a small, innocent child, which is very strange because we're adults and you can't harm me, or I have the capacity to leave at any point. I have power, I have autonomy. However, you won't feel like that. You'll feel like your life is in threat, resurrecting that old trigger. Another reason it's so uncomfortable is maybe in the past saying no meant there was going to be rejection or abandonment, perhaps conflict, or someone would withdraw their love from us. Those are all threats to our survival as children. And that's kind of when you've been conditioned to believe that, you continue to believe that and uphold that as an adult. And that continues to be your fear of, I won't survive with the rejection or abandonment, or if someone leaves me, it's the end. It feels very much the same as when you were a child. And also, this plays into our nervous system. Our nervous system associate boundaries with danger. So it's going to feel very physical in our body, and that danger is going to feel very real. However, reminder, where's my camera? I hit to go opposite. Discomfort does not mean that we're doing something wrong. It means that we're building up a new skill or developing or stepping outside of our comfort zone, perhaps. It is not an indicator that we are wrong or doing a bad thing. Okay. Continuing on, kind of expanding on the barriers of boundaries. Really, we can dissect this into two categories: internal barriers and external barriers. The internal are the experiences that I'm feeling within me. This could be guilt, fear of abandonment, fear of angering people, this overarching need for approval, shame, shame just in general, or having shame because you have needs. Because maybe as a child, you weren't allowed to have any needs. And there could be a lot of shame attached to that now as an adult. And another internal barrier could be that we're confusing boundaries with being mean. It's a big one. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to upset anyone. It's not a big deal. I'll get over it. Let's go to external barriers. These are the barriers that we're going to face in the outside world. Could be that we live with people who are constantly violating boundaries. Some people, I never say anyone is good or bad. Some people, they thrive off of violating people's boundaries. It's like a game. How easy are you going to be to give up on your new rules? Let's see. Oh, you're new person now? Okay. New rules in our relationship? Okay. Let's see how easily they're tempted. And they might even put a timeline on it. I bet I can get them to abandon their boundaries in 3 weeks. I'll get them to go right back to normal. I say no one is good or bad because for them, that is actually the least resistant option. As you know, our brain is actually wired for least resistance. So your brain is going to search for the answer to this problem or the solution that's going to be the least resistance, the least amount of energy for me. And for that person, the path of least resistance is getting you to abandon your boundaries, is drawing you back into the old patterns that we have. And they not only are they just going along with their brain and the least resistance, but it's not something they're fully aware of that they're doing. There is some awareness, there is a sliver, but it's not fully in the forefront of the brain. And it's so slight that it's very easy to ignore. It's just making sure this is why I always talk about it's imperative that we vet who we're around and we take extreme caution on who we allow into our world because the people in our world are going to influence us and we want to make sure those people aren't influencing in negative or bad ways. External barriers, some other ones include codependent relationships. Guess what? A codependent relationship cannot function with boundaries. It can't. And that could be a huge barrier for someone if they're engaged in that type of relationship dynamic. Financial dependence. If I'm kind of sacrificing the now to make sure I have safety in the now and paying the price in the later because I'm financially dependent or I'm going through a hard spot right now, sometimes that can be a very big barrier because you would have to sacrifice certain things in the moment for financial reasons. Also, another barrier could be cultural or family expectations. There are some cultures where it's a little bit harder to establish boundaries with your family members or your friends. Depending on the culture, how it functions, you might not be allowed. And I know there's certain Asian cultures are pretty strict on expectations of their children and very demanding. You will be a lawyer, you will be a doctor, engineer, you're not going to be anything else. And there's a lot of excuse me, there's a lot of harshness that happens on the other side of that for the children. There could be a high propensity for depression, and there's an immense amount of pressure put on them. There could be suicidal tendencies because of that. There could be animosity as well. Like, you kind of forced me to do this thing and I lost my own compass. But for the family, they wanted you to be set up and established, and they also wanted maybe the prestige that goes along with that. So certain situations are going to be harder than others. And last on my list for external barriers, I have manipulation disguised as love. That ties into the first thing I mentioned, where living with people who violate boundaries. Sometimes people, their title makes us believe that this should be one of the top 5 people who loves me the most in the world, and because of that, my guard is dropped with them. Could be parent, sibling, spouse, childhood best friend. Those should be your number one supporters, but we tend to find that they're usually your number one haters, unfortunately. And we might misinterpret, and they have a easier access to us, and those are the people who can manipulate us the quickest. We might misunderstand that as love. Gonna drink some water. Okay. Moving to the next one. Okay, let's tie in a little bit. Addiction specific barriers could be this habit of using substances to avoid conflict, using people pleasing to manage anxiety or emotions or relationships, and avoiding honesty to keep the peace. Let's talk about types of boundaries and how to actually apply them, because this is what we need. We want to apply. Going back to internal boundaries, these are the boundaries I have with myself. Examples: I don't abandon myself to keep others happy. That's my boundary with myself. When I start slipping, I need to make the corrective reflection and action for that. I allow myself to rest even when I feel guilty about it. Let's take a nap. Let's have a lazy day. I feel a little guilty. I kind of feel like a loser for wasting the day. I'm going to allow myself that gift of rest, regardless of any kind of noise that's trying to discourage me for that. I don't lie to avoid discomfort. That might be my boundary. I don't stay in situations that threaten my sobriety. Point blank, straight across the board. If my sobriety is threatened in any situation or scenario, immediately I leave. It's how you, as the family member, how I want you to think about this is threatening their sobriety is essentially threatening their life. That's the same as having a weapon against somebody's skin, or trying to lead someone off a cliff, or ask someone to participate in illegal activities. We are threatening their life when their sobriety is threatened. And I want to drill that into you, because it is that dangerous for the majority of addicts. As you know, opioids are very high on the list, and the fatality rate is extremely high. So it would take nothing for them to lose their life after being triggered. For them, it is a life and death situation. It's not a gym, just skip the gym today or just go to the party. It's just one beer. It's not that. It's a life or death matter. And I want you to start absorbing the severity of addiction and how it genuinely is a life or death matter. When their sobriety is threatened, I want you to start thinking about it in that way. No, they can't just have one beer. No, they can't just hang out and sit at a party while everyone else is drinking. No, they can't just hang out in this illegal activity house. They cannot. And while for you, it's not a big deal, they should be able to control themselves. It's just a family gathering, chill out, you're being dramatic. There is no extent where they're overly dramatic as it pertains to preserving their sobriety. There's none. They cannot be overly dramatic about preserving that for themselves. And that's something very important to understand as a family member. Okay, those are just some examples of my internal boundaries. Now I share this with the group. I don't have an addiction. My younger sister did. I personally don't drink, haven't drank for many, many years, and that's just a personal choice. I don't drink, and I also don't go to places where that's the main goal or event. I don't go to bars. I don't go to wine tastings. I don't go to clubs. It's not my vibe because that's all everyone else is doing. They're on substances, their mind is altered, and I just don't enjoy being there. I've had many offers to go to social events that revolve around alcohol, and I just don't go. Yes, I could go and bite the bullet or just suck it up and go. I feel uncomfortable and I don't enjoy myself. Why would I subject myself to that? I don't. And that's just my boundary. Okay, let's shift to external boundaries. This is our standard, our protocol as it pertains to other people. And as you know, you teach people how to treat you. If people are constantly rude to you, it's because you haven't set any boundaries. You allow them to get away with that type of action. People will only treat you how you command. If you want to be treated like dirt, there's a ton of people who are willing to do that. If you want to be treated like royalty, there's also a ton of people who are willing to do that. Reflecting on our relationships and what type of behaviors we're accepting, that's going to be our experience with people. Am I constantly giving and never receiving anything? Am I always stretching out for people and they never come over here to me? There's a reason that's occurring. It's because you allow it to occur through lack of boundaries and through lack of vetting of people in your life. No shame or blame here, babe. Never, ever, ever. What we do is we bring awareness. We have to bring awareness to ourselves. We have to be able to look into the mirror and be like, yeah, that's me. That's all me, for better or for worse. That's me right there. Okay. Boundaries as it pertains to external. It's not you need to stop, you need to do this. I command you, da 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 da. But rather, if this happens, I will dot dot dot. If you invite me to an event and I find out it's a wine tasting, I will leave. I'm not going to command that the room changes for me. I'm not going to command that all my friends stop drinking or no one I know ever goes to a wine tasting or no one invites me anywhere. People are allowed to live their lives how they want, but so am I. And my responsibility is within myself. I'm not controlling the outside world, I'm controlling myself. If there is alcohol and the whole event is based around alcohol, I will leave. That's my thing. If we get into an argument and someone raises their voice and my boundary is I don't argue, then the conversation ends. I leave, I get off the phone, I remove myself. You can scream all you want. You can scream at the wall for all I care. I'm just not going to participate. I'm not going to be there. It's not my vibe. And emotional, the little asterisk on this side is emotional boundaries. You are not responsible for the feelings of others. You can care and love someone without fixing or changing them. And you can say no without explaining yourself. I can say no to alcohol based events and I don't have to give my backstory on it because people will often just assume you're an alcoholic or something or like, oh, really? Why? It's not my vibe. I don't owe a conversation about that to anyone. I don't need to convince you. I'm not having a debate about it. That's just my thing. And kind of the more stern we are, and that's my vibe, that's who I am, those are my regulations. The more stern and stable we are in that, the less we'll feel the desire to over explain ourselves to other people. Let's move into some strategies. Number one thing, we're going to expect pushback. People are not going to like that you're setting boundaries, especially people who you've established relationships with. They're not going to like it. I gave this example today. It's like you've, or how I look at relationships is we've signed a contract. There have been terms that we both agreed to. You're going to behave like that. I'm going to behave like this. You do that. I do this. We flow. And maybe we've been flowing this way for 50 years. And suddenly I come up and I say, hey, this is the new contract. I need you to sign it. And that person's going to look at you like you're crazy. What are you talking about? We've had this contract running for 50 years. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not going over a new contract. I like the one we've got. I don't need to read anything new or sign anything new. I'm not interested. That's that pushback, that resistance. And again, going back to my earlier example, a lot of that is for them in their brain, least resistance. They're going to sway to least resistance and they don't want change. So they're going to just try to do whatever they can to discourage change and to keep things the same. Pushback is going to happen. I always tell people when you're learning a new skill, anything new, it's best to practice it on people that you don't really have much relationship with. You're not overly intertwined with them because those people aren't going to care. Like, okay, like, what do I care? A person who's new in my life, if I tell them, hey, I don't want to go to the bar, that's just not my vibe, they'll be like, okay, then we'll go somewhere else. Or, all right, I'll catch you next time. A person who I used to go to the bar with for decades, and we've had a lot of memories at the bar, and we've invested a lot of time into each other at that bar. If I suddenly say, I don't go to bars, they're going to be like, you don't what? We've always done that. We've spent many years inside of bars together, a lot of money in those bars, a lot of conversation and trust building and memories in those bars. You don't do it anymore? There's going to be pushback. So, to practice these boundaries and get really skilled at our delivery and different situations or different events that could arise, practicing on people we're not too attached to is going to be the best way to start implementing that. And also, those are going to be the people who aren't going to really push back at you. Like, they don't care. Next, we want to keep boundaries simple. One sentence, calm, neutral tone, no justification, no overly explaining ourselves, and we are not debating. Next strategy to implement or overcome these difficulties as it pertains to boundaries is practicing tolerating guilt. There's going to be this guilt, discomfort, unease within us. We're going to feel like bad people. We let someone down or someone's not going to like us anymore. We're going to have to practice tolerating that and sitting within that. Those emotions aren't an indicator that you're doing something wrong. It's only indicating we're doing something different. It's not danger, it's not wrongdoing, and it will fade. And sometimes, most of the time, that guilt is just a way for us to punish ourselves to prevent ourselves from changing. Going back to the brain is wired for least resistance. Most of the time, we just do that to ourselves. We punish and implement these boundary lines. Oh, let me change that. Box lines. And we tell ourselves we're not allowed to go outside the box. And when we start venturing out, we'll start punishing ourselves to put ourselves back in because that's the least resistance. A lot of these emotions or sentiments are punishing ourselves. Of course, we want to make sure that we're communicating our boundaries. Going back, that contract, well, it's only fair they get to look at it. They have to be able to look at the contract and read it. They have to understand it. Maybe they're going to need a lawyer to look at it. You have to give people an opportunity to receive the communication. What happens with addicts is they get sober and they get out and they think everyone should know, that people in their lives should know better. And I tell them all the time, they don't know anything. And you have to communicate as though they know nothing. How am I supposed to know your boundaries? How am I supposed to know what's in the new contract? Your responsibility is to communicate. I'm not reading your mind. I'm not guessing what your rules are. You have to tell them to me. That's part of your job. And within that, we have to be very consistent with our boundaries. There is almost zero space for making exceptions to our boundaries. And what we'll find is, depending who we are around, if we start making exceptions for our boundaries, those people are going to look at that as a weakness. Ah, so you made a little exception. Oh, you wanted to go to the graduation party, but there was alcohol there. What happened to that? I thought you don't do that. They're going to make it their mission to get you to do that again. It will be a personal challenge, and they will get a lot of satisfaction trying to manipulate circumstances to get you to do that again. They're not evil or bad or anything like that. They're not aware of their actions, but they will make it a game to get you to do it again. Just saying, that's why we have to be very consistent. It sends a mixed message to people. Well, I don't get it, Amanda. Sometimes you go to drinking events, sometimes you don't. Like, what's your rule? I don't understand it. It's like a cop saying, "Oh yeah, sometimes you can speed, but sometimes you can't." And when you can't, you really can't. And you're like, "Well, what is it? Like, how am I supposed to know when I can't, when I can?" We have to be super clear. It has to be straight across the board. And of course, we always want to choose progress over approval. You don't need to approve of my no alcohol events boundary. You don't need to like it. You don't need to approve of it. You don't need to accept it. You don't need to go along with it. That's none of my business. My business is upholding respect for myself and upholding boundaries for myself. That's my part of it. If you want to be here beside me, nice. If you don't, nice. It's the same. We want to make sure that our boundaries are not being changed according to acceptance of others, being accepted by them. Some closing comments. Boundaries are not going to push away the right people. If I'm trying to level up and become a better version of myself, that means I'm going to have to shed people, places, things, behaviors. And if you're one of the people that's got to get shed, bye. We had fun, but just wasn't a forever thing. The people who encourage us to grow and expand are going to be the people that we want near us. And the people who don't want you to level up and become a better version of yourself, why would you want them near you? And we can use boundaries as a little bit of a filter. They also help to reveal who respects you. Because if I respect you and I genuinely want this relationship, and we're both healthy people and we're both leveling up type of people, I am more than happy to oblige your boundaries. I would never fight you on your boundaries because I respect you. And I understand that you have to make yourself the priority. And people who don't respect you, people who are benefiting from you not having boundaries, those are the people who are going to be angry. And that's okay because they're losing their resources. So there's going to be some thrashing. Let them thrash. Recovery, sobriety requires learning to disappoint others while not abandoning ourselves. Going back to that feeling of discomfort. That's just a requirement. And addicts are asked to do this a lot in their journey within sobriety, making sure that they sit with having to disappoint other people or watch people that they love, people with prestigious titles in their life, like parent, sibling, have to watch those people fade off into the distance a bit. Some takeaways: boundaries are going to feel uncomfortable because they challenge our old survival patterns. Dysfunctional families train you to feel guilty for protecting yourself. Boundaries are straight lines. They're not this swinging open door gate. They are not. Recovery, sobriety, it absolutely requires boundaries. Not just to understand boundaries, but we have to implement those boundaries. And that's what I have for today's rehab topic of boundaries. I love talking about this topic because it's one that people hate. I am a little devilish on the inside, and I love when people hate stuff. That's why I have to be very vigilant that I'm in alignment, because I would easily be one of those people who would terrorize others. The ones who push your boundaries and just see how easy you would fall on those boundaries. I would be those types of people. So I love talking about boundaries because people get annoyed by it, and I kind of like it. But also because boundaries, I think, are misunderstood. They are surface very simple in context, but very complex to apply and to practice and get comfortable with. I feel like there's a lot of space for us to explore and dive deep with that. Also, boundaries are a fundamental in relationships, and your relationships will never be healthy unless we have these solid boundaries. I think it's one of the most imperative parts of a relationship, knowing where each other stands and how to respect each other in our dynamic. For those reasons, I like talking about boundaries. I enjoyed our live today. As always, y'all know you can leave your comments. I love doing Q&As and I often gather the questions and we do Q&A. Let's see, you can find me at soberandbeyond.com or Amanda at soberandbeyond.com. I mentioned last week you got some stuff coming in the upworks on the site. And yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all in the socials and engaging with me, and I'll engage with y'all. And we will see you next Tuesday. Bye.